So I guess it's kind of time we address this, and that's Tesla's biggest recall. But before we get into Tesla's recall, I kind of want to show you some data about some other companies I think you all might be interested in. The biggest recall, obviously, we have seen lately is VW's, and this was their emissions testing issue they had, and they actually implemented something to reduce the amount of nitrogen oxide that was put into the environment. This actually affected 11 million of VW, Audi, and Porsche's cars that were clean diesel, and what ended up happening is they were putting out 40 times the federal standard since 2009. This was actually found out in 2014 by a study commissioned by CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board, but was actually discovered by West Virginia University in a study they were doing in the real world. Before you know it, the EPA got involved and it blew up. In all, 11 million vehicles were affected. 550,000 of those vehicles were actually sold in the US between 2009 and 2016. Go over a few of them. There was the Beetle, the Golf, the Jetta, the Passat, the Touareg, and then some Audis that were affected, the A3, the A6, the A7, the A8, the Q5, the Q7, and the Porsche Cayenne. That was the diesel model. That's a lot to be affected, and to have 500,000 cars here in the US alone is quite a significant number. So exactly how did VW cheat the system and get it to last so long? Cars actually have several different modes, some of which are on the road modes, and some of which are modes you can use while your car's on a dyno. And a dyno is actually a device, it's almost like a treadmill for cars, think of it that way. But that way they can test performance, get emissions testing and everything. So when you actually take your car, if you still have one, to get emissions tested, they actually put it on a dyno and it goes into a certain mode so that the car knows it's on that and won't freak out setting off stability control, traction control. It's basically so the car knows it's not in a bad situation that it needs to try to take over. But it does put it in a separate mode, and VW extorted this feature and basically made it so that all the cars in this mode would perform much better than they would on the road. So through all of this, it actually resulted in VW paying out upwards of almost $15 billion so far, and that number is still growing. And that actually goes back to consumers, that goes to reduce and address environmental harm. So there's a lot going on there with all that money because it's a large chunk, but actual owners were able to sell their car back to VW at post Dieselgate, as we'll call it, prices, and in that they would actually get another $5,000 to $10,000 on top of that for their problems. VW is actually trying to fix some of these cars, but that's kind of what we're going to talk about here in a minute, and a lot of them have just been sitting there. VW is not the only car manufacturer plagued by recalls. Recently, GM had a $2 billion recall due to faulty ignition switches. Toyota recently had a $1.4 billion recall over acceleration issues. So I talk about those to talk about Tesla now. So Tesla's recent recall, which was announced on March 29th of 2018, affects Model S steering assist motor bolts. So Tesla is proactively, which is kind of the key word here, retrofitting a power steering component in the Model S vehicle years prior to 2016. So this is going to be pretty much all the classic Model S's with the front fascia. No injuries or accidents have been reported with over 1 billion miles driven, but Tesla has observed excessive corrosion on the power steering bolts. But this has only been reported in cold climates, ones that use calcium or magnesium road salt instead of a typical sodium chloride, which sodium chloride, in case you don't know, is just a table salt. So environments that use any kind of harsher chemicals that also do corrode have noticed this, but Tesla is going to replace all the bolts in all cars in climates. Doesn't matter if you're in a cold climate or not, because they don't actually know where that car is going to end up. It could always be sold to someone in a colder climate, and they want to be safe on that. If this did actually happen while you were driving and the bolts failed, I believe there's actually 3 of these bolts, but if they did fail, what would happen is you would lose power steering. So any steering would actually be a lot harder. You'd have to spin the wheel a lot more. Your steering still functions, but just not the power steering aspect of it. And Tesla is saying that no action is needed immediately, but they are going to be reaching out to everybody to replace those bolts, which are said to take about an hour or so to fix, and they'll be reaching out to everybody as soon as replacement parts are available. And I mean, it's a pretty simple fix, but I kind of want to talk about everything because really the VW issue is probably one of the largest known recalls ever, and we went out to Colorado Springs to visit one of the sites where VW has been storing a lot of cars at Pikes Peak International Raceway. Threw up the drone and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of cars, and this is just one of only 37 sites in the US. There's even more in other countries. So it's all these cars have been sitting there for probably about 2 years now, and they just haven't moved. So I'm kind of curious to know how VW is going to handle this. There's been a lot of talk saying that there is several ways they can remedy and retrofit this, but clearly they're not actively doing that, because why would you let such a big asset just sit? So I kind of wanted to go over all the recalls because I've been seeing a lot of misinformation, saying how Tesla has this big issue and no other car manufacturer is having such recalls. And I just pointed out just a few. We got VW, Audi, Porsche, GM, we had Toyota that also have issues. No car manufacturer is free and clear of issues. It's all about how they handle it. And in my opinion, VW, yes, they did make it right with some consumers, but look at all this waste they have sitting across the world. Not just the US, worldwide. 11 million cars. There's a lot that goes on to it. Yes, Tesla did have a recall. Is it that big of an issue? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to affect them at all. I really just think it's just a minor bump in the road. It's actually just for a bolt. They weren't trying to cheat the system like VW was. VW did that on purpose because they knew they couldn't meet emission demands. So they circumvented the system. They abused what they shouldn't have. Whereas Tesla, and I mean even some of the other recalls we've seen from other car manufacturers, are not so much they did it on purpose. It's just they found one of the parts wasn't up to par, so they're replacing them. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, tell you guys about this VW thing, because that actually bugs me more than anything. There's just all these cars just sitting there, and it was just a giant waste of resources more than anything. All the materials that went into making these cars, and now they're just sitting there for no one really knows how long. It could be another decade. I mean, they've been sitting in all these places for like almost 2 years now and haven't been touched. Okay, now that I'm off my little pedestal here, hopefully you guys enjoyed that and it was kind of informative. I wanted to really go out and see those cars, VWs in particular, myself. That way I could really take in the situation, because really without seeing them, you really can't appreciate how things are without seeing it firsthand. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video though. If you did, definitely thumbs up. And if you are looking for a Tesla, definitely check out our website, teslainventory.com. And if you're looking for a newer inventory model S or X, feel free to use our referral code. It's down in the description below or at the top of our website. Using it will actually get you free unlimited supercharging, which is currently the only way to do so, and help qualify us for certain rewards, which is how we get to all these cool events to kind of bring you guys along through the live streams and such. And if you guys do use our referral code, definitely send me an email through the website. We actually have a new form there that you can put in your contact information, which goes directly to our database. That way, when we do take delivery of our next gen Roadster, we can invite you guys out. You can be along with the delivery, and we can do some test rides, because really without your support, none of that would be possible. So I really can't thank you guys enough. Definitely though, thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and click here to subscribe, here for some other ones, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.